Welcome, everyone. Today's topic is the evolution of rental markets and where to find them on a pandemic. Okay, so let's quickly talk about the current situation that we are experiencing in real estate, and we're going to be focusing particularly in the rental market. Okay, so right now, obviously, through high rates, inflation, buyers are not able to have the same purchasing power as before. Therefore, they're falling back into rentals. So we still have a shortage of rental inventory. Therefore, it's pushing rental rates through the sky. Okay. So now, for those of us who try to do flips in the last 6 months, we all struggle. I know many investors, including us, who could not sell at the price we expected or sell them at all. So we had to fall back on plan B, which is refinance the property and then get it rented. So in a nutshell, renting is the true power of wealth accumulation in real estate, right? Owning rentals. So right now it has become extremely attractive to get into the rental market, okay? Because right now we're seeing an increase in inventory supply, and we're seeing better deals coming through the pipeline. When I mean better deals, we're talking about properties that require light to medium rehab, okay? So those are the changes that we are taking on right now, light to medium rehab. So we're staying away from gut rehabs at this point because material and labor costs have gone as well through the roof, okay? Therefore, it's just very risky to take on big rehab jobs. And obviously the money is not in the construction, it's in the investing, meaning in and out as soon as possible. So right now we engage in projects whose rehab is below 75,000. Once you go beyond 75,000, it's just very risky, right? Because you're touching multiple systems, getting inspectors, permits for just about every system. Okay, so where can you find the top rental markets? So we have updated our report area analysis reports in the last 2 weeks. So we have created a spreadsheet that is updated with the very latest top rental markets. Okay, because right now when a deal comes our way, we match it up with the top rental market list. Right now, pretty much most markets have a very strong rental market, but there are some that are still at the very top. So what's considered a great rental market? A great rental market is where you have two components. One is the purchase price still is below 200,000, meaning that all-in investment on the purchase and rehab, you are below 200,000, and the rents are hitting 1,800 and above. Okay, those are considered great rental markets. Okay, like Berkeley, Broadview, we have Bellwood, we have Old Seat, Burbank, Lansing. So you can still find great deals, all-in investment below 200,000, and yet the rents are hitting 18, 19, 2,000 per month. Okay, therefore cash flow is just over 500 in these properties. Bolton is a C plus, C minus neighborhood. We're seeing great cash flow in Dalton when bought at the right price. Okay, so properties, for instance, in Dalton, should be bought below 90,000. Okay, and the rehab should be no more than 40,000, 45,000 for the numbers to make sense, because they're going to price anywhere between 135 for a two-bedroom to all the way to 175 for a three-bedroom. And the rents for a three-bedroom are hitting 1850, for a two-bedroom 1550, for a four-bedroom 2,000. Okay, so automatically we apply the rule of thumb of the 1%, which is really important on rental markets. So what does that mean? If all-in investment, purchase and rehab is, for instance, 130,000, that means that 1% of that is 1,300. So your rent should be at least 1,300, or 1% of the total on all-in investment. And in fact, it's going to be more than that. Okay, therefore, we're seeing cash flowing properties in the south suburbs like Calumet City, Lansing, Dalton, of at least 400 to 500 and up. Okay, just the latest refinance we did on a Dalton property, a four-bedroom, 1.5 bath. Principal, interest, tax, and insurance is $1,050, and the rent is $2,000, right? So the cash flow is just very high, right? $950 a month. So south suburbs are very appealing for cash flow. Okay, flips, it's a different story, right? So you just need to be extremely cautious, and right now flips are going to become even more challenging because the market swings. We're towards the end of the summer, entering the fall. Families have already settled because kids went back to school in August. So September, October are going to slow down. Once we hit November, it's going to really tank, okay? Because people are thinking holidays, people don't want to move in the winter. Okay, so doing flips, you've got to be extremely conservative. In fact, it's the opposite. That's when we should be out there looking for great deals so that we buy them in the fall, winter, rehab through the cold months, and be able to put them back on the market in early spring. Okay, so we're going to get better pricing, better deals, because investors, many are sort of like off season, but if we focus on this season that is coming up, it's going to be great for investors, right? Especially if you want to do buy and hold. Okay, we're seeing an increase in inventory supply, which is good, and that's coming from the distressed properties that are being recycled back into the market that came from the foreclosure process. So we're seeing REO increase coming through the pipeline. It's not very significant, but we're seeing increase in REOs recycling back into the market, short sales as well, which is a good thing, right? Because we need an increase in inventory supply to help pricing correction. Meaning right now, properties are still overpriced. So expectation is that in the next 6 to 12 months, we're still going to see price drops in certain areas, but it's not going to be very significant. They're talking maybe 10 to 15%, depending on the area, max, because again, there's still demand for inventory. So what are the changes and what is it that you need to focus on when it comes to rentals? Please apply the rule of the 1%. That's going to tell you if it's a great rental market. So the all-in investment, purchase and rehab, so take 1% of that. That should be at least your monthly rental income. Okay, so that's one factor. Second factor, that you need to focus on rehabs that are less than 75,000. And guess what? Right now, if you take on a rehab, let's say a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, where you need to do medium rehab, that means that you need to do upgrade the kitchen, the bathroom, flooring, paint. you're going to be hitting $45,000 to $55,000, okay, due to the increase in materials and labor for a medium rehab. So that's something to be aware of. And the way, or the rule of thumb that we use now, is that we take the square footage and multiply it by $30. So if the square footage is, let's say, 1,300 times 30, that's 30, that's almost 40,000, 39, and you need to add a cushion of 5 to 10,000. So 39 plus 5 to 10, you're hitting 45 to 50,000. Okay. Now, if you run into a deal that requires a lot of exterior work, I'm talking roof, siding, windows, driveway, garage, then guess what? You have to multiply the square footage times $40. So 1,300 square foot property times 40, that's 40,000. 40 times 3, that's 52,000 plus the cushion. You're hitting easily 55 to 60,000 when you consider the exterior work. And believe me, we as investors often disregard exterior rehabbing, and that's critical, right? Curb appeal, landscaping, and it's expensive, 5 to 10,000 easily on just exterior work. So again, that is why we are not doing go rehabs. That means that where you need to touch every single system, like upgrading plumbing, electric, HVAC, roofs, windows, that is just too much to take on right now. It's just not worth it. So we're focusing on simple rehabs. So lately we've done very, very cosmetic rehabs. One in South Holland, I believe the rehab came out to be a little bit less than 10,000. We're taking another one in Chicago. That's gonna be probably less than 12,000 for sure, with materials and labor. So those are cosmetic live rehabs where you're hitting 15,000 or less. Okay, it's rare, but it's better to take longer to find these type of deals, or wait for these deals to come your way, rather than, as they say, right, trying to force a square peg in a round hole, right? Don't try to force deals. Like the inventory we were talking about earlier today in Dalton, those properties require very little rehab. So I'm talking about less than 25,000. So that's really hard to come across. And it's important, right, to take on light rehabs. Like right now, we took a really big project in Park Ridge that's been led by my wife, Frida, and it's been very, very challenging. And believe me, you also run into the issue of certain villages being very strict, right? And Park Ridge being one of them. You have a lot of inspectors looking over your shoulder on every single thing. I mean, we have 2-3 inspections in a week, right? And they can fail you multiple times until things are up to code. And guess what? You're spending money, you're bleeding cash left and right. So that's where, your risk goes through the roof, okay? Taking on big projects, finishing basements, we're no longer doing that for most properties. And then attic work, that's out of the question. So basements and attic finishing just takes too much time and work, money, and effort. Okay, so again, the lesser the work on the property, the better off you're going to be. So right now, we should all be focusing on wholesaling, rentals, and if you're going to take on a fleet, it has to be very light. Okay, I'm talking about ideally less than 45, 50,000. Best case scenario, less than 25,000. Okay, and then be able to be in and out as soon as possible. Like we're completing a rehab in Schiller Park this week, so that property will be, it's a condo, will be put on the market this week. Okay, again, the rehab on that one is going to hit a little bit less than 10,000. So you're in and out in 2 weeks or less, okay, in these type of projects. And that's what you want, right? You don't want to be on a rehab project for more than 2 months, okay? Right now, it's just too risky and too expensive. So far, is this making sense? Are there any questions? Okay. So now let's talk about, since we're focusing on the rentals, let's talk about what makes a successful rental, right? Because we just talk about finding a great deal and then rehabbing and then putting back on the market. But let's talk about behind the scenes, right? First of all, where are we finding these deals? That's number one. Number two, understanding the numbers. Number three, funding. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about funding because that's a critical component, right, of being able to successfully do rentals. So let's talk about the most important thing, right? Funding. That's a critical component for rentals. What is it that you need to pay attention to when it comes to funding, buying the property? Okay. So there's two-factor to the equation, two-factor formula to the equation. One, when you buy the property, you obviously need to add value to it, so you need to rehab it. So what type of funding are you going to be using? What type of funding makes sense for starting the project? So you have two options. It has to be a bridge loan. So you have two options, either a bridge loan through a Harmony lender or private funding, right? So let's just quickly talk about the differences. So the bridge loan from an institution, like let's say Renovo, Constructive Loans, and many more out there. So the benefit is that they're going to give you a short-term high interest, I'm talking about 9% rate, and they will give you 100% of the rehab. So the drawback is that you won't get the money upfront for the rehab. So you have to upfront the expenses and then request draws on it. Okay, so that's in a nutshell the Harmony lenders, whereas private money lenders are going to give you both the money for the rehab and the money for the purchase. So you can have pretty much
Hugo, we can't hear you.
You hear me?
I can hear you now.
You hear him now.
It's an echo
Okay,
though.
perfect. Oh, okay. I think I fixed the echo. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. So when it comes to the funding, what is it that you need to think about? You always need to think about having 25% equity on the back end, always. So when you buy the property and rehab it, guess what? You need to add enough value so that when it appraises, you have 25%. Example, buy it for 50, put in maybe 40, 50, that's 150 all in. Then that property better appraised for 200,000 or more. So that, why is that important to have that 25% equity? Because now when it comes down to holding the property and renting it, you need to switch that rehab loan into a long-term commercial loan. And you need to pay off, obviously, the short-term bridge loan or fix and flip loan. So when you refinance, guess what? Most lenders are going to give you 75% of the ARV. So guess what? You need 150,000 to pay off the outstanding loan. Therefore, if it appraises for 200,000, they will only give you 75% of 200,000, which is 150,000. So you have the option to, they call it rate in term. That means they will pay off what you owe within the 75% ratio or of the loan to value. Or if you end up with more equity, assuming that the property appraises for over 200,000, you have the option to do a cash out refinance. Obviously, keep in mind that's going to be a little bit more expensive. If you get, let's say, a 7% interest rate on a rating term, a cash out refinance, you're going to be hitting 7.5. So it's about at least half a point difference. So it's going to be more expensive, but you're going to be able to not only pay the outstanding fix and flip loan, but cash out, and that money will offset the down payment that you used for the purchase, or you could use that for another deal. Okay, so you have those two options. So funding, to understand funding is very, very critical. Okay, so let's go over some of the numbers. I'm going to share my screen so that you understand what we're trying to do when it comes to the numbers. So I'm going to talk about the deal that we closed last Friday in Chicago, and this was brought by Keith. We have Manuel and Mirtha as partners on this property. So this property's purchase price was $135,000. Okay, so based on what I explained, what should the ARV be on this property? I'm going to show you the pictures. So let me scroll down. So this is the kitchen. So pretty much it doesn't need to be done. The bathroom, it's been rehabbed. So you need some patching on the wall, and then the basement has, let me see if we have some basement pictures. No, I don't think we have the basement pictures, but we need to do some drywall in the basement because it used to, there was a flooding in the basement. So they cut out maybe 2 feet, 1 or 2 feet all around the basement. Okay, so that needs to be fixed. They remove all the doors because they got damaged, the frames. So that all needs to be done, some patches. So that's sort of like light or cosmetic. So my question to you is, how much will the rehab be on this property and what should the ARV be? So I just need some estimates.
About 40, 45.
40, 45. Okay, Michelle. So if the rehab is, let's say, 40, 45, all in you are like a 180, what should the ARV be, the after repair value?
Around 260.
250. Okay, so the way, how did you compute that, Brian, Michelle? You're absolutely right, but how did you do it? So all in is 180. So how did you come up with 250?
Oh, it's I'm adding that 40,000 to make it 175, plus another, I don't know, give or take 10% for closing costs. Another 17,000, and then you want a X amount of profit margin, like you said, at least 25% of equity, or more, so that you could pay back, you know, everybody that's involved and still walk out with a profit.
Right, exactly. So let me show you the easiest way. So between purchase and rehab, you guys came up with 180,000. Okay. So the easy way to come up with the ARV is 180,000 is 3/4 of the pie. Remember? So you're gonna divide the entire after repair value by 4. Right? So when you have the purchase and the rehab, that is 3/4 of the total pie. So you cut the pie in 4 pieces. The purchase and the rehab is comprised of 3 pieces. So if three pieces of the pie comprised of 180,000. So each piece is worth 60,000. 60, 60, 60, right? So 60 times 3, 180. So the fourth piece is worth 60,000, right? So you multiply 60 times 4, that should be your expected ARV, so 240,000. Okay. In this case, the rehab for this property is going to be less than 15,000. Okay, because this is going to be a flip. Okay, so the rehab is going to be less than 15,000. So all in is going to be 150,000. So technically, this property, if it appraises for 200,000, we're going to be good, right? Because all in is 150. That means that each piece of the pie is 50, 50, 50. So the purchase price and rehab, all three should amount to 150. Therefore, the other piece is worth 50,000, which is the equity, right? So the ARV on this property, it's right here, 225, 227 or so. And this has been very conservative in today's market. Okay, so that is why we're gonna attempt to do a flip on this property. And this property, we started the rehab on Monday. We closed Friday, we started on Monday, and it's gonna be ready to put back on the market by next Wednesday. Okay, so because the rehab is light. So the key is to be in and out as fast as possible, put it on the market as fast as possible before the end of the summer. Okay, so that's an example of analyzing the numbers. So now let's assume that we cannot sell this property for whatever reason, right? Worst case scenario. So what happens with, first of all, how did we fund this property? Okay, originally we had an application through Kiavi, but guess what happened with Kiavi? We put 19, 20 transactions through the pipeline with Kiavi in 1 month, in the month of August. So guess what? We experienced delays. They put a lot of properties through a risk management assessment process, which caused many delays. And obviously, we upset many sellers. So for this particular property, we had to get the cash to pay for the property and close on it. Else, we could have lost the deal. And we did that for maybe a couple of properties that, we were not anticipating. So we got a loan for 167,000 on this property. Okay, so we're gonna have some reserves, obviously, for the rehab, and we're gonna have overage, so money left over. Okay, so now what happens at this point if the property, for whatever reason, you cannot sell? Then you have to pay off that short-term loan, right? The private money lender, we have to pay them off because every month, guess what? We are incurring 1% of the total loan amount as carrying costs plus utilities. So the carrying cost on this property is going to be $1,670, just interest only, plus utilities. We're going to be hitting, maybe add another 100. It's going to be like $1,750 a month, okay, just for carrying expenses. So if we don't sell it, right, for instance, in a few months, we might turn this into a rental. So when we refinance, again, we are going to, let's say, if we get the ARV of 227, right? So I'm going to do 227 times 75% loan to value. So that's 170,000, right? That's the most they can give us. And that's just going to be the right amount to pay off 167. So it's just the perfect amount. Okay, so that means that if we fall back on a rental plan, what's going to be our principal, interest, tax, and insurance on this property? Okay, so I'm going to use a calculator. So the total property or total loan amount is going to be 170,000, right? 1, 2, 3. And then we're gonna have the interest rate. I'm gonna do, let's say 7.5, 30-year. Now taxes on these, I'm just gonna put, I believe let's say 5,000 on these. Okay, so the principal, interest, tax, and insurance is gonna be 1,650 on this property. This is a 3-bedroom, actually 4-bedroom, 2-bath. So I'm sure we're gonna be able to rent it for higher than 1,650. Okay, so this could probably be rented for 1,850 easily, 18 or 1950, which means that, being conservative, 1,850, that means that the cash flow will be about 200. Okay, it's not great, but at least you won't lose any money. Okay, so this is the key, right? Before you enter into a transaction, you've got to have 2 successful exit strategies available to you. Especially if you're pursuing the flip, you need to make sure that you can fall back on the rental strategy. So worst case scenario, we're gonna be able to pay off our private loan and be able to cash flow at least 200. So in a nutshell, we're getting a free property because it's being paid by the tenant, and on top of it, you'll have some additional cash flow. Okay, so that's the fallback plan. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood the reasoning and math behind pursuing a rental. Okay, so when you pursue a rental, what formula do you use? It's a more forgiving formula. So right now for rentals, to be on the conservative side, on declining ARVs, we're doing the ARV times 75% on the rental. Okay, so if the ARV is 200,000, we multiply that times 75%, which is 150,000 minus the rehab. So if the rehab is 15,000, for instance, like in this case, as an example, then 150,000 minus 15,000 is 135,000. So that's the most you should pay for the property. So you can work the numbers backwards using that formula, but this is the key. If you use the formula of the 75% on the rental, what happens if you decide to sell the property for whatever reason and you decide not to keep it? Can you fall back on a flip? No, if you use the 75%, you've got to use the 70% for the flip. Okay, so take the ARV times 70%, so 200,000 times 70% is 140,000 minus the rehab, 140 minus 15, right, is 125. Okay, so the max allowable offer on this property should have been 125. Okay, not 135. So that is very, very important. If you are trying to do a rental, which is the most forgiving offer, right? Because you have a lot of years to recoup, right? If you overpay a little bit for the property, but you always need to be able to have 2 successful exit strategies. That's critical. So even if you are pursuing a rental, make a flip offer, okay? Just to fall back on a flip. If you are going to pursue a flip, like in this case, the rental option is going to be easier, right? Because we're using the formula of the 70%, which is what we used on this particular house. Okay. So are there any questions so far? Understanding the numbers, working the numbers backwards, meaning from the bottom up, starting on your max allowable offer, which is driven by the ARV times 70% on a flip, minus a rehab, right? That's working the numbers backwards, or working the numbers from the bottom up, meaning if you pay all in 150, what should the ARV be? 200,000. In this case, all in is 180. So what should the ARV be? Each piece is worth 60,000. So 2 pieces for the purchase, let's say around 120 or so, and the other piece is the rehab. So all three pieces of the pie, purchase and rehab, amounting to 180,000. So the last piece of the pie, which is the equity that is required by every lender to have in the property, is the fourth piece of the pie, or 25%. It's in this case 60,000. So it's so critical to stick to the numbers, right? Because you don't want to have to bring money on the refinance. If you don't stick to the formulas, guess what? When you refinance, you will have to bring money to the table. Okay. Now, when you refinance, you have to keep two things in mind when finding a lender. Most lenders are going to have requirements, right, for the refinance. Most of them are going to have a seasoning period requirement. That means from the time you purchase a property to the time you start the refinance or complete the refinance, they want you to have some seasoning, meaning have owned the property for at least 90 days. We use Civic because they don't have a seasoning period. So you can buy the property today and start the refi process tomorrow, which is good. Another requirement is most lenders will require a lease. Civic does not. If it's vacant, they're going to take market rents for it, which is good, right? Because by the time you find the tenant and get a lease signed, it could take a month. So you're incurring current expenses. So that is why we use Civic. Some other lenders are going to give you only 80% of the ARV on the refinance. Civic gives you 75%. Okay, so so that means that they're going to be able to you're going to have less skin in the game. So there are many advantages. Right now, we're currently using Civic for refinances versus other lenders, especially the seasoning requirement, right? That's big, and the lease requirement. So those are the basics of funding on rentals, right? You always need to make sure that you're able to have 25% equity in the back end. Always, always. If you don't, the consequence is that you're going to have a lot more skin on the game, and on the refinance, you need to bring money to the table, okay? Which is not the best case scenario. Are there any questions so far on just the basics of the formula for recycling money and be able to successfully have two exit strategies? Oops, I think I switched over to the meeting. Okay. Any other questions? So something that is very, very critical once you buy a property that you're gonna do buy and hold. So I'm gonna ask you, what is it that you must do once you close on a property that is meant for a buy and hold? What are the next steps? Can somebody guess?
Work on the
The rehab process.
taxes. Oh,
Taxes, yes. What else?
The rehab process.
Rehab process, perfect. What else?
Once it's rehab, perhaps lend it out. I mean, rent it out. I'm sorry, rent it out instead of lend
Absolutely,
it out.
absolutely. Yeah, you guys answer correctly. I'm gonna add a few more. So the minute we close on a property, in fact, today we bought a property in Dalton on behalf of one of our deal makers, WHOLESALE. So we bought a property in Dalton. So this is something new, right, that we're doing on behalf of our members. So we're using a line of credit to buy properties because we're getting the best terms for the loan. Okay, so we bought a property on behalf of WHOLESALE in Dalton today. Okay, so what is it that WHOLESALE needs to do? So I'm going to tell you, checklist. Make sure you write these down. Number one, turn on all the utilities under your name right away. And then you obviously, once you close the property, you have already done the scope of work. So you need to start working with the village on permits. You might need a permit for the dumpster, windows, roof, HVAC, electric, plumbing. So you need to assess and pull permits right away. You need to engage a tax appeal firm that all they do is tax appeals right away. As soon as you close, boom. That's number 3. Number 4, you've gotta engage the solar conversion company like Sunrun, and we have a broker as part of our group. We have Salvador. He's a broker with multiple solar companies, so they're gonna assess the the possibility of converting the entire system to solar, okay, when it comes to the electric usage. So they're going to check sun exposure, they're going to check your electric bills and assess, right, if it's got the right sun exposure, if it's a candidate for solar conversion. And it's just the way to go, because not only will you be adding value to the property, but you're going to be saving a lot in electric bill. Especially you're going to transfer those savings to the tenant. So it's just a really good thing. So again, utilities, permits, tax appeal, solar conversion, and you need to engage in this case, and we have Elena on the line. Yeah, perfect. So Elena is one of our key partners when it comes to roofs and siding, okay? So what we typically do with Elena is we make sure that we send her our insurance policy over to her. She will assess our coverage on the property and perhaps recommend a different company. So what we want to have coverage on is roof and siding, right? So if the roof or siding is not in the best condition, then Elena is going to be in the lookout, right, for perhaps future hail or wind storms in the neighborhood, because there's a likelihood that you can have a claim with insurance for a new roof or new siding, right? And in fact, I met with Elena today, and then they approved siding and roof on one of our rentals. I believe it was a little bit over 20,000, right, Elena?
Yes, 21,000 and something plus whatever we have to get for dumpster and permits. Yeah, we did great. Liberty Mutual is paying really good on the claims, but I remember we had to switch that insurance because you had a high deductible on that property. And Frida, she sent me the quotes. She sent me like 3 different quotes. So I revised the quotes and I told her this one looks fine. The deductible was not too high, and then the coverage looks good. So yeah, we were able to get a claim approved. And she does it a lot. Like Frida, she'll send me different ones, or she will call me and ask, Elena, which insurance is paying better? I know State Farm used to be the best, but they change a lot. Today is the worst. And I mean, usually I go to my inspections and I talk to the inspectors. So I know which insurance is paying good. Yeah, but
Yeah,
feel free like to send me the quotes. I talked to George and I think Nita, she also sent some policies to revise for her. And I just told her, yeah, pick this one and we just wait for our storm date.
exactly. So that's so critical, right? Because I remember we used to have was it Allstate? Yeah, Allstate as well. So we totally switched every single policy on every single property based on Elena's assessment. Because as she said, right, insurance companies change their policies, right? And the objective for them is not to pay out on claims. So we want to work with insurance that currently is paying out and is paying out good. And today, as she mentioned, happens to be Liberty Mutual. Okay, so we're switching everything, right, to Liberty Mutual. So we want to make sure that we have the right coverage on the property, because what's the point of paying a premium when you don't have the right coverage? If there is a natural disaster like a hailstorm and you get damage on your property and you're not able to get a claim on them, right? Then you're just wasting your money. So that is why Elena has played an incredible key role in our rental portfolio. I mean, she's done no less than probably 10 roofs, right?
Yeah.
At
Plus
least.
repairs and plus retail, siding, garage. Yeah. You guys keep
Exactly.
me really busy. Thank you.
Exactly. No, no, no. I mean, she's added, I would say, in retail value on these rentals over $250,000. I mean, think about it. The cost of doing a roof might be 10, 12, 15,000, but on the appraisal value, putting a new roof is going to add no less than 20, 25,000. So times 10, it's $250,000 in retail value that Elena has added. So that's pretty much priceless, right? So that's a key component in holding rentals. Okay, so it's not just
You,
buying a property and getting insurance out of the blue. No, no, no. You really need to follow. It's like blackjack, right? It's just a formula, numbers, and the things that you have to do as a checklist once you close on the property. Those are a must. Somebody had a question?
yes, Hugo.
Hey,
Uh,
Rob.
do you, it seems like you're strategizing on which insurance company to change to before you do a claim. After you do the claim, do you end up having to change the insurance company because they get upset with you or whatever?
Not necessarily, and then Elena can answer that better. So we've
Um,
changed insurances based on her assessment and her recommendation.
no, usually with Frida and Hugo, we try to do one claim at a time, and then they have the different LLCs. So you don't want to look too greedy. So we just close claim and then we go to the next one. We try not to have it happened to me before. Like I opened two claims for one of my clients when I just started working here, and they pay me one and then they deny the other one. But no, if you really know how to do it, try to have the different properties with different LLCs, and you should be fine. Not under your personal name because you don't want to have too many claims on your personal name. They may increase your premium or they may cancel on you. You don't wanna, and you don't want that. So that's how we've been doing it with free. I know we don't have no issues.
Exactly. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Everything needs to be done under your entity. That is extremely critical for asset protection. And then it won't affect your FICO. It won't affect your debt income ratio. It's not going to affect none of that stuff. In fact, they won't even see that in public records. So it is so critical to do it through your entity. Okay. Yeah, because if you file a claim, man, it affects all your premiums, including for your probably vehicle. If you have, everything under the same roof or company.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any other recommendations for investors, Elena, who pursue rentals?
Um, yeah, it happened to Nita's husband. He when
Oh,
he they
got
bought a prop on Nita's husband.
Yeah, got it. Got it.
Yes, yeah. So they bought a property in Tinley Park, and I remember they called me about the roof, so I went to check the roof. And I told them, can you please look for a good policy so we be able to do that roof within 6 months? So they went to get a policy, and it ended up that it was an ACB policy. And I was just working on the permits because they approved the claim, but they put a depreciation on the roof like for 50%. When it's an ACB policy, that means that they're gonna pay just for the age of your roof. So they only gonna give us half of whatever the roof was approved. And I just, I mean, it happened to them. And I told them, please feel free to send me the quote before you buy the policy. I will revise them and I will tell you, buy this one or this one looks fine. But yeah, so it happened to me, and I'm just working on the permit. So we'll figure out how to do his roof. But yeah, definitely insurance is just gonna give us half. Hmm.
Yeah, no, thank you, Elena, for everything you've done. And can you please post your contact information on the chat so people reach out to you if they
Uh,
have further questions?
yes,
Otherwise, Elena is in Chicago DealVault on their roof. Preferred partners, you can find all her personal or contact information there.
yeah, I just sent my on the text. I put my information, and yeah, feel free to call me if you have any questions. I was just talking to George, and he sent me like 5 policies to revise them, and he bought a property in Florida, and he told me to, because I just got approved one roof in Florida, in Orlando. So he's like, will you help me prepare for a claim in the future? I mean, for Florida, because I know Florida is different. Like, it's very
Of
hard to
course.
get approved. So he did send me the policies, and I revised them, and I just gonna send them like which property we gonna be doing the claim soon.
Perfect. Thank you, Elena. So yeah, please reach out just to make sure that you have the right coverage, the right insurance company, because that's just a critical component of everything we do when it comes to rentals. Now, on the rental side, one of the biggest challenges is getting the right tenant, right? And that's very critical because having somebody that is not going to be able to pay rent, it's going to become a big nightmare. Okay, so how do you find them? How do you screen tenants? What is it that you need to look for in tenants? Okay, so first of all, you need to screen every single tenant. So what we use is we use mysmartmove.com. So we send them a link via email and they pay about $39, $41. And then we're going to get credit report, eviction report, criminal report that we assess. But most importantly, when we put a property on the market for rent, we're going to put it in multiple places. One is going to be Section 8, another one is going to be MLS, and we also do social media like Facebook. Okay. So right now, due to the high demand, we get a lot of applicants. So what we do is before we schedule a showing, we're going to screen them over the phone. And the first question is going to be, what's your income? Okay, so how much should they make? Super simple. Multiply the rental amount times 40, and that should be their yearly household income. So if the rent is, for instance, 1,500, multiply that times 40, that's 60,000. So they need to make combined household income at least 60,000. If they make 40,000, you're going to need to tell them, I'm sorry, but the minimum requirement for yearly household income is at least 60,000 because you don't want to put somebody there who's not going to be able to afford the property. Okay, so 40 times the monthly amount should be the yearly household income. That's one. Second thing that we ask is, do you have any evictions? If they say yes, I'm sorry, but we don't take anybody with evictions, okay? And then credit report, you want to see FICO score over 600. Sometimes we see FICOs below 600, but that needs to be compensated by a strong income. Or perhaps you bring a co-signer as well that you're going to screen. Okay, that's an option. Now, once you get somebody that is financially sound, fairly good credit, then you're ready to sign the lease. Now, the question is, will you do a 2-year lease or a 1-year lease? Okay. Many people believe 2-year lease is better. I don't personally, and I'm going to tell you why. We always do only 1-year leases. And the reason why is because we need to increase the rents on a yearly basis, even if it's something symbolic. we've been pursuing before the pandemic hit anywhere between at least 25 up to 50 a month. Now that the rents have gone through the roof, we've seen increases in 100 up to 300-400 increases. I mean, it's been crazy. So that is why we like yearly leases, because let me tell you, a 2-year lease doesn't mean anything. I'm going to tell you why. Because if for whatever reason the tenant is going to move out because they have like life changes events, right? Life changing events. So they're going to move out. Are you going to prevent them from moving out? Of course not, right? So they're going to break out of the lease. So what are you going to do? I mean, your responsibility as a landlord is to market the property as soon as possible. To minimize the losses. So technically, you can take them to court for the lost rent while you don't, while you have a vacancy. But you have to prove that in court, that you've done everything possible to rent out the property and you were not able to. But in today's market, you're going to be able to rent the property in no time. So that is why I rather increase the rent on a yearly basis than every 2 years, right? Plus, if we don't like the tenant, guess what? We're not going to renew the lease. I don't want to be stuck with somebody that, it's causing us trouble, right, for 2 years. So that is why, personally, we always do yearly leases, okay? So once, now, something important, Section 8, many landlords do not like Section 8. You've got to be extremely careful because it's a protected class in the state of Illinois. So it's source of income, especially if you're a licensee, a broker. If you violate, in this case, a protected class, you could be fined up to $2,500 when you discriminate against a source of income, and source of income is Section 8. It's just a source of income type. So Section 8 is great. The key with Section 8 is that you just need to start as high as possible, because once you start working with the government, they won't allow you to increase the rent on a yearly basis by more than 3-4%. Okay, so you want to try to rent it as high as possible. But it's good. I mean, we love Section 8 because they pay on time. They do yearly inspections, and that helps us keep up the property in good shape, that everything is functional. So that's screening the tenants and getting the best possible tenant in place. Now, the question is, will you want to self-manage or have somebody professionally manage the property? The answer is, or some people say, how many properties should I own before I start hiring somebody to do it for me? One property. If you have one property, hire a property management company that is going to take care of the tenant communication, rent collection, issue management, lease renewal, late notices, rent rolls, everything, right? That's something you don't want to be doing. It could be a very, very tiring job to be in contact with the tenants, right? Because they can call you at any time, right, for just about anything. So you don't want to get those type of phone calls. We use Secure Pay One. We pay a flat fee, $50 if I'm not mistaken per door, and they handle everything. What I like about the property management company is that they use our contractors or our handyman to dispatch them, and they just charge a flat fee, versus most property management companies, they charge a percentage of the rent, plus they use their own handyman, and that's where they make the money. They make the money on the repairs, not so much on the 8 to 10% of the rental amount they charge. It's mostly on the maintenance items, because most of them have full-time handymen, so obviously they've got to pay them their salary. So always pursue a professional property management. Secure Pay One is who we use. Avoid doing self-management, okay? Because you won't be able to enforce late fees. You won't be on top of the landlord-tenant ordinance. Especially if you're going to be collecting security deposits, there's especially in the city of Chicago, it favors tenants, right? So you don't keep that money in a escrow account, pay them interest, give them a receipt. When they move out, you have 30 days to send them the list of repairs, 45 days to return earnest money, and many more rules around the security deposit. If you fail in one of them, guess what? They can take you to court and you're going to pay 2-3 times the security deposit. So that is why many landlords opted for like non-refundable moving fees. That's another option, 500, 600, or whatever amount is appropriate for moving fees, so they don't have to deal with security deposits. So there's a lot involved in property management. That's something that you do not want to do. We self-manage some of the properties that pretty much we did a lot of rehabbing, like pretty much everything is in new condition. So we're gonna get less maintenance issues. So we self-manage those, but we have a software for that. We enforce pretty much late fees and just like a full-blown out property management company. But if there are multi-units, there's a higher turnover. The quality of the tenancy is not as great. So for multi-units 2 and up, we always hand those over to Secure Pay 1. So again, never engage in property management. It's just too time consuming, not worth it. There's no money in there. In fact, that's where you can lose a lot of money when you do it yourself, okay? It has to be done in the right way. Send out 5-day notices with servers, engage an eviction attorney if need be. Hopefully that's never the case. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, right? If you're going to pursue rentals, but it's by far the best wealth mechanism long term, okay? Owning rentals for passive income. That's just the way to go, because over time you are going to build up equity, net worth, therefore, and also cash flow, because over time rents are going up. So your cash flow obviously will increase. Are there any questions so far on rentals?
The average cash flow on a rental should be like 300 to 350, right?
Yes, exactly. We're pursuing at least 300 in today's market condition. We're shooting for at least 300 because rents are just extremely high today, and that's because of the shift, right? Now, people who cannot buy are now moving into the rental market, so that's pushing rents up. Um, so yeah, absolutely, you should aim for at least 300 or more. And don't be afraid to raise rents, right? But obviously you need to justify them and make sure that you keep up with the maintenance on the properties. Never neglect. And that's what property management companies do. They're going to do bi-monthly inspections, right? Just to make sure that the property is in good condition, that they don't have more people living in the premises or pets, right? Be aware of pets, right? There's a list of like 10 dangerous breeds that you don't want to have in your property for liability purposes. Insurance have riders where they will not pay out claims when you have dangerous breeds. So when they say, do you accept pets? We do, but depending what kind, right? If it's one of the dangerous breeds, we won't, okay? Or if they have too many pets, we're gonna not only have a security pet deposit, but oftentimes we have pet rent, anywhere between 50 to 75, up to 100 a month, in addition to the existing rent for pet rent, because, right, some pets are gonna cause a lot of damage in the property. So you just need to be aware of it.
Hi, Igor.
Hi, Sam.
Do you accept the alligator as a pet?
We've never come across that. No, we've never come.
In Florida, sometimes they do.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I want to tell you the renter in Chicago are very lucky that they have to pay 40%, I mean, 40 times the rent.
Yeah.
In New York, you have to pay 80 to 90 times the rent, meaning
Whoa,
that if you want to rent a $2,000 condo, you have to show $160,000 income.
that's
So
insane.
good luck with that.
Of course, of course.
Yes,
Yeah.
but uh, Igor, I have a question regarding, you mentioned that as soon as we buy the property, hire a lawyer to appeal the taxes.
Yes.
Is it, I believe there's a certain time that they can appeal it every 3 years, right?
Okay,
Or
so
they can,
assessment occurs every other year, but they can appeal it yearly. Okay. And once you give them the property, they're going to do it forever. Why? Because if they save you money on the assessment on the real estate tax bill, they're going to charge 30% of the savings for the first year. So it's totally worth it, right? That's something you cannot do, or you shouldn't be doing. I mean, that's all they do. So
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. They can appeal it yearly, but they assess every other year. Some, depending on the county, some every 3 years. But yeah, there are some time frames for appeals, and they're on top of that stuff. That's something you don't want to be involved in, but you have to engage the right company. Just like we engage Elena for insurance purposes, you do that for real estate taxes to appeal them. Yeah,
So
so
the
that
30% that they charge, is that for 3 years or it's every year?
they charge 30% of the savings for the first year. So if they save you, let's say $1,000 in the first year, for instance, they'll charge 333. Yeah. So again, you need to have proper insurance, right? In case there's a natural disaster, you can have a claim and be paid out. You've got to
Wow.
have tax appeal company on your side. You've got to have a property management company, right, on your side, and you've got to thoroughly screen tenants. Okay, so those are four pieces that, guess what? Most investors, boom, oversee. It goes over their head, and it's not because they neglect that, it's because they just don't know, right?
Yes.
So that's the purpose of today's webinar, right? If you focus on rentals, which is the best time right now, make sure that you buy it for the right time using the flip formula. So ARV times 70% minus rehab. I'm going to do a quick recap. Engage in rehabs of less than 75,000, nothing over 75. Um, and then apply you run the numbers to analyze the deal, bottom up or top down. So the top down is the ARV times 70% minus the rehab. That's going to give you the most you should pay for the property. Or bottom up, you know the purchase price, you know the rehab. That's 3/4 of the pie. So what's the last slice worth? So you need to add that to come up with the expected ARV. Remember, you need that 25% equity on the back end to refinance. You always want to buy properties on with a fix and flip or rehab loan, so they give you 100% of the rehab to add value to the property, so that you can expect the highest ARV on the property and end up with the 25% equity, so you have very little or no money stuck in the property. If you end up with more than 25% equity, you have the option when you refinance to do a cash out. It's going to be half a point more expensive, but you can tap into the equity of the property. Again, 75% is the standard. On refinances, we use Civic because no seasoning required. From the time you buy it, you can start the refinance if it's a quick rehab, and then no requirement on leases, which is great. So that's on the funding aspect of it, okay? And then on the process to stabilize the property, we just cover that, right? Screen the tenant, have a property management, professionally manage your property. And then the checklist, once you close on the properties or property utilities, permits, tax appeal, insurance, and solar conversion, okay? So right away, you need to add value to the property and have your investment secured with the right insurance coverage and right insurance company, okay? Should a disaster occur, you will have no problems. So again, rely on the experts. Elena Rodriguez for roof and siding, right coverage. For tax appeal, we use Park and Long. It's on the preferred partners in Chicago DealVault. For solar, we use Sunrun, and we also use Salvador from the Deal Makers. So you can email support, or we have these under the preferred partners for solar conversion. And for property management, we use Secure Pay One. Okay. Always when you rehab a property, please use licensed and insured contractors that can come in, pull permits, and you don't need to babysit them, right? Handymen are just for upkeep of the properties, but not to do rehabs because they cannot pull permits, they don't know the code, and they can take too long to do the rehab. So be just cautious of that, who you hire for the rehab. Okay, so that briefly summarizes today's topic. Are there any other questions?
Hugo, your advice at this market, if the property doesn't sell, just keep dropping the price until somebody come and grab it, right?
Okay, you have two options. Yes, you can drop the price. You've got to be careful about that because you need to think about your plan B. What's going to be your plan B, right? Are you going to continue to drop the price or are you going to turn that into a rental, right? So if you're going to turn that into rental, then you need to refinance, right? So because when you refinance, guess what? The appraiser is gonna be seeing all the price drops. So that's gonna affect the back end value that you get on the appraisal for the refinance.
You're
So
right.
that's something to be aware of. If you started, let's say at 300, and you start dropping all the way to 250, when you fall back on a rental, you've got to refinance. Appraiser is gonna say, okay, 250. And you're asking for over 300 appraisal value, it's not going to happen. So just be very careful with that.
Yes, very good point.
What we've done in the past, another very risky strategy is that we do a big drop. We've done a 20,000 drop, 25,000 drop, just to get people's attention, to get into a multiple offer situation. And if that happens, great, right? Because then we can obviously get above asking price offers. But then right away, if we sell it, good. And if not, we're going to need to increase the price back up to where it was. It's just a risky strategy, but we've done that in the past. And they're gonna question that. Why did you drop the price by 20,000? You just tell them the truth. It's just a marketing strategy to get traction on the sale. Right? And then you bring the price up back up again if you don't happen to sell it so that it doesn't affect the back end refinance appraisal value. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what they did in 2001. I mean 21.
Yeah.
They came up with a low price so to create an auction or competition.
Exactly. And it works. We've done it a couple of times. It works. And
Yes.
we've done it on the rental market as well, right? So we price it low. And guess what? We get a lot of applicants, and then boom, we just pick the best. And guess what? Even like a couple of properties we listed for like 1650, we ended up renting it for 1850, and they didn't have a problem. We tell the tenants, hey, listen, there was a lot of demand, highest and best, and right now, unless you are willing to pay 1800, then you have no chance. So we've done that on the rental market as well. Since today's topic is rentals, we do these, we create this sense of urgency, and then when you schedule showings to show the property to qualified tenants, guess what? You don't show the property multiple times during the week. You want to create the sense of urgency and bring 5 10, 15, 20 people all at once, right? To create that sense of urgency that you've got to make an offer and fill out an application if you want to get the property. So those are like marketing strategies that we've used successfully in the past that I highly recommend.
Sounds good. Thank you.
No problem, Sam. Anybody else? Okay, great. So if no further questions, thank you everyone for joining. I look forward to speaking with you. If you need anything, just reach out. I'm going to put my cell phone on the line, 773-368-4551. And then I'm going to also give you our email, support@chicagodealvault.com, if you need access to Chicago DealVault for free for 30 days. 30-day trial, please send us an email and we'll give you access. You can access our preferred partner list and many more leads and information on Chicago DealVault. So thank you everyone for joining tonight. Have a wonderful evening. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Thank you everyone.